It's early in Jesus' ministry. And the word is spreading fast, not just in one town or just in one region, but everywhere. People are talking. They say he's healed a man who couldn't walk. They say he's cast out demons with just a word. They say that he can forgive sin. And now the crowds are growing, not just by the dozens, not even by the hundreds, but by the thousands. And one day, just outside a small town, there's a man standing in the crowd. We don't know his name. We don't know his story, but we know why he's there. Because everyone in that crowd is there for a reason. Many are sick, most are desperate, but all are curious. They want to see the show. And this man has heard enough to believe that if he can just get close, maybe Jesus can do something for him. So he pushes forward, elbow to elbow, shoulder to shoulder, fighting through the noise, the dust, the chaos. And finally, he gets close enough to see Jesus. And he's standing there, almost surrounded, swallowed up by the crowd. And in that moment, everything inside the man is screaming, "This is it. This is my chance." Except then something unexpected happens. Jesus steps back. He looks at his disciples and he says, "We're leaving." Not because he doesn't care, not because he's overwhelmed, but because he knows the crowd is there for what he can do for them. And he came for something far greater than that. And as Jesus begins to turn and walk away, I wonder, what did that man do in that moment? Does he stay in the crowd frustrated that he didn't get what he came for? Or does he step out of the crowd and follow Jesus? Because that right there, that's the difference between being in the crowd and being a disciple. And that's exactly where Mark chapter 3 is going to take us this morning. This morning we're continuing our journey through the book of Mark. And along the way, we've been watching Jesus. Who he goes to, who he speaks with, who he spends time with, and what he says along the way. And now in chapter 3, things kind of begin to come into focus a little bit more. Jesus steps away from the chaos of the crowds and he gathers his disciples and he says, "Let me show you what this life is all about." And so if you've ever wondered what it really means to be a Christian, this is your moment. Today is your day. Because we've spent plenty of time looking at why Jesus has, what Jesus has done. Today we're going to start asking why it matters, what he's calling us to do. So if you've got your Bible with you, go ahead and open it up to Mark chapter 3, starting in verse 7. Mark chapter 3, verse 7. It says, Jesus withdrew with his disciples to the lake. Now stop right there. Right off the bat, that raises a question for me. Why does it sound like Jesus is running away? What's going on here that we need to understand? Well, in order to answer it, we've got to rewind just a few verses back to where we left off last week. You might have heard me say this maybe more than once, that context is important. We have to understand why Jesus withdrew to the lake, because it is foundation. It is at the very core of who he is. Last week we saw that Jesus had just healed a man on the Sabbath day, right in front of the religious leaders, knowing full well that it's going to stir them up. He looked around at them in anger, deeply grieved by their hard hearts, and he told the man, "Stretch out your hand." And just like that, it was completely restored. Instead of celebrating a miracle, the Pharisees decide that they need to put an end to this, and they start plotting about how they can kill him. So yeah, when you read that Jesus withdrew, it's not out of fear. It is strategy. Because the temperature just went from warm to boiling hot. Now, can we just go down a rabbit hole just for a few minutes? Because we see this happening every day in our world today, don't we? There's a part of me that really wishes this story took a completely different direction right here. There's a part of me that wants Jesus to walk right into that temple and say, you want to come after me? Bring it. Let's settle it right here and right now. I've been healing people. I've been loving people. I'm teaching God's word. And for that, you want to kill me? And then maybe just like for effect, these big black clouds would boil up and thunder and lightning would come out and everybody would know that there's God, that he was God. Or better yet, I'd like to see Jesus walk up to the Pharisee and go ahead, punk, make my day. That would be my favorite chapter in the whole Bible. But seriously, you would think that this was the perfect moment for Jesus to make a really important, really good point. Instead of calling out their hypocrisy and saying enough is enough, he withdraws and he goes to the lake. And there's a part of me inside of me that really wants to ask Jesus, why? Because I think when we come across something in our Bibles that we don't understand, it's okay to stop and ask questions. It's okay to ask God, what's going on here? What am I missing? I think it's healthy, and I think it forces us to reason and research what's really going on here. So why doesn't Jesus stay and fight? Why doesn't he defend what's right and what's fair and what's true? Why would he walk away from this perfect opportunity? Because by watching him retreat, he looks weak. He looks timid. Unless there's something more going on here than what we realize. The answer is this: Jesus wasn't avoiding the battle. He's choosing the battlefield. Because timing matters. Mission matters. And strategy matters. You see, if Jesus engages them right here, in this moment, the story ends too soon. The cross comes too early. His teaching isn't finished. His disciples aren't ready. His mission isn't complete yet. Jesus didn't come just to win an argument with religious leaders. He came to redeem humanity, you and me. And that's very different. So he steps away not out of weakness, but out of control. This is not retreat. This is restraint. It is the discipline to not take the bait, because the Pharisees wanted a fight. They wanted a confrontation. They wanted a moment that they could use against Jesus. And Jesus refused to give it to them. Let me say it this way, and it's not on your note sheet, but you might want to write this one down. You ready? Not every attack deserves your response. Let me say it again a little differently. Not every accusation deserves your energy. Not every argument has your name on it. Jesus shows us something here that I struggle with, and many of you might also. You can be absolutely right, and the other person could be absolutely wrong. And yet you can still choose not to engage. We don't see that much in our world anymore today, do we? Now when someone has a differing opinion, we have to get up in their face, or they have to get up in ours and make a point out of it. You can be completely justified to stand your ground and defend your position, and yet you can still walk away. Because sometimes the most spiritual thing you can do is not to prove your point, but to protect your purpose. Better write that one down too. Let me say it again. Sometimes the most spiritual thing you can do is not to prove your point, not to prove that you're right, but to protect your purpose. Our purpose here on earth is not to win arguments. Our purpose is to win souls for God's kingdom. That's why we're here. Our purpose is to save people, not to defeat people with argumentation and debate. And Jesus understood that. He knew that there would come a day where he would stand. He knew there would come a day where he would face them head on. He knew there would come a day when he would go to their cross and not walk away. But today wasn't that day. So he withdraws, not because he's afraid, but because he's focused. And honestly, that kind of raises a question for us too. How many times do we step into battles that God never intended for us to fight? And in doing so, we miss the very heart of the thing he has called us to do. Jesus has a great opportunity to stand up and become very confrontational. He has every right to get up in the face of the Pharisees. He knows what they're thinking. He knows their plot to kill him. So he's certainly within his rights to stand up and say, wait a minute. But that's not what he does. Because his mission isn't about proving power. It's about fulfilling his Father's plan. So instead of charging in, he steps away to the lake. He gathers the disciples. And here's where it gets interesting, because even when he withdraws, the crowds don't leave him alone. Let's continue on in verse 7. Jesus withdrew with his disciples to the lake, and a large crowd from Galilee followed. When they heard about all he was doing, many people came from Judea, Jerusalem, Idumea, and the regions across the Jordan around Tyre and Sidon. Even going out by the lake, the crowds kept coming. Why? Well, because they heard what he's been doing. Not what he's been teaching. They heard what he's been doing. People weren't showing up for Bible lessons. They were showing up for results. They wanted to see the miracles. They wanted to see the healing. They wanted something from him. And so Jesus pulls away from the city and he goes out to the lake. But the crowds follow him because they want something from him. Let's be honest, that's sometimes the way we are too, isn't it? People still come to Jesus wanting him to do something for them, to fix something, to heal something, to change something. And that don't get me wrong, that's not wrong. But it does beg a deeper question for all of us. Are we here for what he can do for us? Or are we here for what he's calling us to become? Well, watch this. Verse 9. Because of the crowd, he told his disciples to have a small boat ready for him to keep the people from crowding him. For he had healed many, so that those with diseases were pushing forward to touch him. Whenever the impure spirits saw him, they fell down before him and cried out, "You are the Son of God!" But he gave them strict orders not to tell others about him. So he tells his disciples, go out, find a boat, get it ready. And at first glance, it almost sounds like he's running again. But that's not what he's doing. Because once again, his goal isn't escape. His goal is teaching. And you cannot teach when everyone's pushing and shoving and grabbing and demanding something from you. You can't speak truth into hearts when the only thing people want is a miracle in that moment. And that's exactly what we see here. A crowd that's captivated by the show, the spectacular, but they're completely missing the spiritual. They're showing up for what Jesus can do for them, instead of what he can do in them. And how often do we come to God with our own list, our prayer requests, and we have this thing that we want to pray for this, and I want to pray for this, and I want to pray for this, and we never get to the part that says, Lord, teach me. Teach me how to be a better husband. Teach me how to be a better wife. Teach me how to raise my kids in a way that honors you. Teach me how to hold my tongue when everything inside of me, my temper wants to just take over. Teach me how to live in a way that truly reflects you. Well, here's the problem. The crowd keeps getting in the way of what Jesus wants to do. Yes, he heals people, but Mark doesn't really highlight the miracles because that's not his main point. His main point is the eternal mission. Because every single person he heals is still going to die someday. Whether he gives them 10 more years or 50 more years, they're still going to die. And then the question is, what then? You see, Jesus isn't focused on the temporary. He's looking at the eternal. And their destiny is hanging in the balance. He's offering something far greater than a moment of temporary relief. He's offering them transformation that lasts forever. You see, Jesus understands that these people aren't coming to him for truth. They're coming for the blessings. They're not coming to surrender. They're coming to receive. And so he pulls away again. This time he gets out on a boat and he begins to teach. Let's go on. Verse 13. Oh, sorry, verse 10. Oh, we missed that one. There we go, verse 13. Jesus went up on a mountainside, and he called to him those he wanted, and they came to him. He appointed 12 that they might be with him, and that he might send them out to preach and have authority to drive out demons. These are the 12 he appointed: Simon, to whom he gave the name Peter; James, the son of Zebedee, and his brother John. To them he gave the name Boanerges, which means sons of thunder; Andrew, Philip, Bartholomew, Matthew, Thomas, James, son of Alphaeus, Thaddeus, Simon the Zealot, and Judas Iscariot, who betrayed him. So out of the crowd, he selects 12 men. 12 very ordinary, very unimpressive, very unknown men. And he makes them his apostles. But I want to go back for a second. Let's go back and look at this. Verse 14 and 15 say that he appoints them for 3 reasons. Number 1, that they might be with him. Number 2, that he could send them out to preach. And number 3, that they would have authority or power over evil. Now, before we rush past this, let's slow down and really dig into it, because everything that they're going to do is going to flow out of this list right here. Do you notice their first calling isn't to preach? Their first calling isn't to have power or authority either. Their first calling was very simply presence. To be with him. That's it. That's the first item on their job description. To walk with him, to listen with him, to learn from him, and to live life alongside of him. And it is really, really important that Jesus lists this for the first reason. And so I want to park here for just a little while this morning, because I think it's important for our lives too. Because everything else, every act of ministry, every word spoken, every bit of impact that we will ever have will flow out of our relationship with Christ. And if that relationship isn't first, then nothing else that follows is going to carry any weight or have any power. We've all heard that old phrase. It's not a religion, it's a what? Relationship, right? And we all hear that and we roll our eyes at it. But friends, it is absolutely true. And this idea of having a relationship with the living God, This absolutely doesn't fit into the Pharisees' little well-defined religious system. It doesn't fit into the box that they put God in. And that's why they're so frustrated with him. Because Jesus doesn't follow their rules. He doesn't fast the way that they expect he should. He doesn't wash his hands in the proper manner that they expected he should, according to their traditions. And he doesn't stay inside their very well-defined, regimented box of things you can do and things you can't. And Jesus says, you can't take something new and force it into something old, because it won't work. 2 weeks ago, Brother Mark stood up here, and he told you about a wineskin that has already been stretched and how it cannot handle new wine. If you try it, it's going to break and everything's going to be lost. And in the same way, Mark told you that you don't take a new patch and sew it onto an old garment, because when it shrinks, it's going to tear the whole thing apart. And Jesus is saying in both of these examples, I did not come to patch up your life. I didn't come to fit into your current system. He says, I come to give you something completely new. He's not interested in cleaning you up. He's not interested in making a better version of you. He's making a completely new you. And now he's sitting in front of religious leaders who think they have God all figured out. And he's saying, don't box me in with your rules and your traditions, because it's not about religion. It is all about relationship. And so Jesus looks at these 12 men and he says, guys, here's your job. Not a long list of instructions, not a lengthy list of rules. It's just 3 simple things. And the first one is the one that matters most. Just be with him. And everything else is going to flow from that. I remember when I first met Lisa, there was something about her that just drew me to her, something very genuine, something very real. And the more time I spent with her, the more time I realized that something was happening inside of me. I didn't want to pretend anymore. I didn't want to be the loudest guy in the room, the center of attention. I just wanted to be real. And as she got to know the real me and loved me anyway, it changed me. Not because I was trying to earn her love, because I already had it. And when you know that you're loved like that, it makes you want to be better. And that's exactly what John tells us in 1 John chapter 4, verse 10. He says, this is love. Not that we loved God first, but that he first loved us. And when you finally understand that, when it moves from your head down to your heart, man, everything begins to change. Because now being with him is no longer a chore. It's no longer a duty. It's a desire. I grew up in a church that told me this book is going to teach you how to love God. And I'll be honest, that always felt to me like an impossible order, something I could never achieve. Because it's hard enough to love people that I can see, let alone an invisible God that I'm supposed to connect with somehow. Somewhere along the way, I think I figured out finally that something had gotten flipped around. Because as a new believer, I'm told I'm supposed to go to Bible study groups and learn more about Jesus. And I'm told that I'm supposed to grow to small groups and learn more about the one who gave his life for me. And I'm told to read my Bible every single day and learn to memorize passages. And I was told those things are really important. And they are. But I'm telling you something today. They are not more important than just being in his presence. They're not. I promise you, no one ever told me, just start by being with Jesus. No one ever told me, just sit in his presence and learn who he is so that you'll understand how deeply he loves you. Because when you do that, man, something changes inside of you. Not in your head, but in your heart. And when you truly begin to understand how much he loves you, how he never takes his eyes off you, how he has pursued you even when you were at your very worst. Man, something rises up inside of you, and it's not forced, it's not manufactured, it's real, it's not something you can create, it's a response. That's what Christianity is at its very core. It's not it's not a system you have to perform or act for. It's a relationship that you respond to. And I love how simple it is when you see it clearly. These 12 disciples are not impressive men. The book of Acts will tell us they are unschooled, untrained, ordinary fishermen, and yet when people see them, they are amazed. Not because of their education, not because of their talent, but because it is obvious they have been with Jesus. They've spent time with him, and that was the difference for them. And I've experienced it in my own life. So many times I run into people from my past who knew me when I wasn't at my best. And they look at me now and they're like, what happened to you? And the only answer I've got, the only thing that makes any sense, is that I met Jesus and he changed everything. That's what this life is supposed to be about. It's not perfect people trying harder, but changed people who have spent time with him. You might remember last November, I stood up here and I told you about how God had showed me that my relationship with him had become distant. Even though I was in his word every single day, even though I was doing all the right things, even though I was looking really good on the outside, my relationship with him had become very transactional. The time that I spent in his word was simply to prepare a sermon or get ready for the next Bible study. I wasn't spending time with him to be with him. I spent time with him to get something from him. And he showed me that sometimes the most spiritual thing you can do is simply to be quiet and let God speak. Because you can be surrounded by religion and you can miss the relationship. You can go to church and serve in ministry. You can check all the right boxes. You can do all the right things and be in the presence, and you'll miss the presence of God entirely. And Jesus says, no, that's what I came for. I didn't come to give you a religion. I came to bring you into a relationship. And can I just be honest with you for a minute? Because this week, this message didn't just step on my toes. Man, it was a 1-2 knockout punch for me personally. I've spent my whole life in church. I've read this book cover to cover. I can't tell you how many times. I've taught on this book for over 2 decades. I've stood on stages like this and I've explained this book. And yet, if I'm being real with you, there have been times when my relationship with Jesus has looked a whole lot more like a transaction than a relationship. I show up, I read my chapter, I check the box. I pray when I need something. I prepare messages about him. But I don't always just sit and be with him. I don't always slow down long enough to enjoy his presence. And somewhere along the way, without even realizing it, I drifted to treating Jesus more like a responsibility instead of a relationship. And here's what's hitting me this week. Jesus didn't die so that I could have a checklist. He didn't go to the cross so I could build a routine. He didn't give his life so that I would simply attend church on Sunday mornings. He died so I would know him, so I could walk with him, so I could be with him. Have you been there? Maybe it's time we start asking ourselves a really hard question this week. Do we actually enjoy being with Jesus? Or do we just feel obligated to spend time with him? Because they're not the same things. They're not. And I wonder how many of us, if we're really being honest, would say, you know what, yeah, I've been doing the right things, but man, I'm missing the relationship. We've been faithful, but I feel distant. We've been consistent, but I can't say I'm connected. We've been present in body, but not engaged in our heart. And I promise you this, Jesus will never sit in heaven going, man, I wish you'd have just read one more chapter. He won't. He's saying, man, I wish you would just spend a few more minutes with me. That's what he wants. He wants your heart, not your head. He wants us to slow down long enough to realize he's already in us. He's already with us. And I think that that's where this shifts for us, because I don't think Jesus wants our goal to be just try harder, just do more. He wants our goal to be just come closer. He doesn't want our goal to be perform better. He wants our goal to be present with him, to sit with him, and to listen. To stop filling every quiet moment with noise so that we could hear him speak. Because when we begin to experience his love, and not just know about it, but really, really experience it, friends, everything changes. Obedience doesn't feel like pressure anymore, and it starts feeling more like a response. Treating him as the Lord that came for me. Spending time with him will stop feeling like a duty and start feeling like a relationship. And that's what he's been after the entire time. And then he moves to the second part of this calling. And he says, you're going to go out and you're going to preach. In other words, you're going to pass on what you've learned from me. Not standing on every street corner with a megaphone and yelling at people. Not building a platform just so you can be heard, but simply, honestly sharing what God has done in your life. Something that looks like a conversation with another parent about how you should raise kids. Sometimes it might be sitting with a friend and just talking honestly about the struggles that you've had in your marriage. Sometimes it might just be saying, hey, here's how my life has changed. And I've tried, but I just can't keep it to myself. That's preaching. That's preaching. It's not about religion. It's about life change. But that only happens when that first step is in place. Because if you're not with him, you don't have anything real to share about him. And that brings us to the third point. Power. Not power for show. Not power for attention, but power to set people free. Jesus says, I'm going to give you authority. And we've already seen what that looks like. It's the power to forgive sin, the power to restore lives, the power to break chains that people can't break on their own. Because, friends, we live in a very, very spiritual world. And the enemy just loves to work in subtle ways that will distract us or tempt us or pull us away one small step at a time. But Jesus says, my power is greater. And it's given so that people can be set free. And here's the beauty of it all. When you begin to understand grace and mercy, when that really, really sinks into you, that you don't earn it, you don't deserve it, and he gave it to you anyway. Man, that changes you. That changes who you are. That changes how you think, how you have your relationships with your husband, your wife, your friends. You realize that the life you should have faced has been replaced with a gift you can never get, you can never earn. You should have faced that cross, and yet he took it for you. And when you realize that, how can you not love him? Not because you have to, but because you want to. And guess what? Now you've got a story to share. Now you've got something to give to someone else. You've got a life that can help set others free. And that leads us to one of the most encouraging truths in this entire passage. Who is it that gets to be disciples? Those who were called by Jesus, right? And those who responded to the call. And if you're sitting there wondering, man, I'm not sure, is Jesus calling me to something? Let me just say the very fact you're asking that question ought to tell you something. Because you don't ask that unless something inside of you is stirring around. And I bet you there are people here who are saying, man, you don't understand my life right now. You don't understand what I've got going on, what I need to fix, what I need to clean up before I come to him. And that, friends, that's where we have it all wrong. A disciple is not chosen because of who they are. A disciple is chosen because of who God can transform them into. A disciple is chosen for who God will make them to be. And here's where this becomes incredibly freeing, because that the whole thing is not that it has nothing to do with who you are right now. It's about who God is making you to become. God has always delighted in taking the most unlikely, overlooked, the ones nobody would have picked, and doing extraordinary things through them. So that at the end of the day, people will not look at your life and go, wow, you are amazing. No, they'll look at your life and go, man, only God could have done that. When you look at the 12 disciples that Jesus chose, you realize something very quickly. Nobody would have picked them for their team. Jesus gives a couple of them the nickname Sons of Thunder because these guys would love to just throw down at a moment's notice. These guys were like, let's go. He picks Peter, who constantly says the wrong thing at the wrong time, to the point that Jesus literally says, get behind me, Satan. That's not exactly the kind of review you want on your resume. He picks Simon the Zealot, a man committed to overthrowing Rome at all costs. And then right next to him, he picks Matthew, the tax collector who works for Rome. And he says, you two are on the same team now. This isn't an accident. Jesus is building something that cannot be explained by human logic. He's bringing together people who don't agree, people who don't fit, people who don't even fully understand him yet. And then just to make it more absolutely unbelievable, he picks Judas. Not a mistake, not an accident, not an oversight. Jesus picks Judas intentionally because there is no human failure that can derail the plans of God, period. And that means something here for every one of us today. Because some of us think, I'm too far gone. He couldn't use me. We think, man, if he knew my past, if you knew my past, if you knew my struggles, if you knew what's really going on in my life right now, you'd understand, Pastor, that doesn't apply to me. But friends, that is not how discipleship works. Jesus doesn't choose people who have it all together. He chooses people that he wants to transform. And along the way, you need to understand one more thing. If you're going to follow him, you're going to face criticism. People will not always understand your choices. They might even question your sanity at times. Jesus' own family shows up and says he's out of his mind. And what does Jesus do? He doesn't argue. He doesn't stop and defend himself. He keeps living out the mission. Because sometimes the most powerful response isn't a rebuttal. It's a life that speaks for itself. Jesus avoids unnecessary conflict, but he never, ever once avoids the truth. When it comes to defending others, Jesus will step in. When it comes to protecting the vulnerable, Jesus will stand firm. But when it comes to defending himself, he stays silent. And in all of it, he stays focused on his mission. A mission to change lives, not win arguments. So he looks at these 12 men and he says, here's your assignment. Go into the world and make disciples, not converts to a system, not followers of a religion, but people who walk with me, people who know me, people who are going to be changed by me. And guess what? That's our assignment too, folks. That's what he's calling us to do. Not something small, not something casual, but something that if you let it will change your life. And here's the question that lingers close to me. Are we just in the crowd looking for what Jesus can do for us? Or are we really wanting that relationship where he begins to change us? Because that's the difference between watching his story and being a part of it. Let's pray. Father, thank you for the reminder that your presence is with us every day in our lives. Not just for an hour or two on Sundays, but in the quiet moments of Monday, the busy pace of Wednesday, and all the ordinary routines that fill our days. Father, teach us just to simply sit and be with you. Teach us what it means to truly walk with you. Remind us that you're always guiding us, always protecting us, always loving us, even when we don't feel it. And God, help us to make space in our lives to hear from you, whether through your word or through our stillness with you, or through moments that we simply stop and listen. And God, as we grow in understanding, as we build that relationship with you, may it change how we see ourselves. And this we ask in the precious, powerful name of Jesus Christ. Amen. Amen. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face to shine on you and be gracious to you. May the Lord lift up his countenance on you and bring you peace. Thank you for being here today. Please come back next Sunday. But in the meantime, remember this week that your first priority is not to perform or to prove, but simply to be with him. And out of that relationship, everything else will flow. So this week, find someone who's struggling, someone who's hurting, and give them the same grace and love that you have been filled with. And oh yes, be sure to invite them to come with you to church next Sunday. God bless you.